Sonic Boom Episode 94. If you build it, they will race. AOSDH already did this. They're just using all the cliches, aren't they? Johnny Test did race episodes too. Let me guess, they'll all be cheating and get away with it. Knuckles tells Tails to hurry up so they won't realize skydiving over a volcano is a bad idea. That's a forced joke. They'd never want to do that. Then Tails uses 3D modeling to replicate objects in real life. Like his video game character maker? Amy says he could build anything. As if she's surprised when he made a video game hippo come to life. Of course he could build anything. Where'd that invention go? And even Knuckles is more creative than him. He wants him to make a pizza oven. Tails at least balances it by saying that you need to build a bigger build-it box. And they're writing self-aware because Sonic has a hard time saying it. Somehow, a genius only thought to make bolts with it. He would revolutionize the world. He would make billions. Sonic decides that all of them should make their own cars, since they're reckless teenagers. But wouldn't they already have their own cars? We've seen them driving through canyons with cars for fun plenty of times. I guess Eggman destroyed their cars off-screen to be a jerk. It's such painful padding that we're being told what all their cars would be like, instead of just being shown that when they're racing. They could have gotten rid of this scene and shown us more times where they use their cars as gimmicks. Styx' car is all about having greenery on it to be stealthy in a failed way. Knuckles is creative, again, because he has more wheel emphasis. Then the heroes plan on having a race, but out of nowhere, just now is the mayor gonna stop them from racing. Why is he here? Like, as opposed to anywhere else in the village. He says they have to pay ludicrous taxes on a public road race, and they have to allow other people to watch it. Somehow it took 8 months for the heroes of the world to be able to have that race on a public road. Realistically, they would have done tons of racing in the canyons first. In fact, realistically they would have just decided, nah, racing in a public road isn't worth it. Somehow, Sonic's actually nice enough to feel bad because everyone's gonna lose to him. Of course, when Eggman wants to compete, we see that his Eggmobile has wheels. So the winner better not be Sonic, or even Amy, because then the entire episode will be pointless. Sonic takes an early lead, getting into his car immediately before everyone else. It would have been hilarious if that disqualified him. That would have been creative writing, showing actual talent. And Sora mentions that his ex-wife is taking the beach house on camera, I guess to vent. After a tower gets knocked over with people on it with Dave taunting them, Amy lampshades that Styx's car might as well not be camouflaged because she's so loud anyways. There's a lot of boring, worthless padding in this episode. It just cuts to various cars. Oh finally! Amy used the hammer from her car to destroy something in her way. Sonic briefly wonders if he should have sacrificed speed for better handling at this point. Eggman sees someone on his tail and sends out some dangerous metal thing to Knuckles. But then Knuckles' creativity is briefly rewarded because he keeps driving because there are wheels on the roof. But he just crashes anyways because he was disoriented driving upside down. Sonic lampshades how someone got ahead of him, and somehow Dave is thanked for being helpful, and he gets splashed with a bunch of orange stuff. That happened so fast. What happened? Amy and Styx's cars spin out of control and crash because of their cheating. It's so weird to have supposed heroes flagrantly cheat the entire race no problem. You'd think the heroes would be preaching against cheating, and only their competitors would do it. Tails' car then crashes. It's so shocking that even he loses so easily. And Sora needs a jetpack to keep reporting on Tails, and it's weirded out that he can't fly while Tails can. If the writer knew this was strange, he should have just had Sora fly and properly taken advantage of him being a bird. Predator Hawk can fly. What's the point of having bird Mobians if they're not able to fly? Surprisingly, it seems like Sonic's out of the race, and even his wheel breaks off. I looked away for 1 second and didn't know how it happened. Eggman actually won, and people boo. Tails then thinks Eggman's parading around without even reaching the finish line. How did he assume that he'd do such a ridiculous thing? Sora says that Eggman is taking another premature victory lap. Fuck this writing! I didn't expect him to do this! There's no way in hell he wouldn't have immediately crossed the finish line! I assumed that he did after I heard all that booing. Why are they so scared? Why are they so afraid of taking even the most minor risk? They should know how popular Boom Eggman is, so this wouldn't be a risk. Anyways, Tails fixes Sonic's car, insultingly quickly, making a combination of all the other cars. So Eggman's distracted by what he thinks is a bush, and Sora infuriates me by saying that the winner might not be a foregone conclusion after all, or maybe it is. Again, fuck you, writer! There's no creativity at all in having Sonic win, and if you know it's uncreative, stop writing like that! Common sense would dictate you not be as predictable as possible when writing a story with no stakes. When Sonic's car won, with Eggman just barely losing, I actually had to resist the urge to stop watching the episode out of sheer disgust. I wanted to exit out of the video. I know Sonic's the hero and Eggman's evil, but I don't care anymore. Sonic's too smug in this show. He's like a bully. Even AOSCH Sonic is better, because at least I had fun with how he was surprisingly evil, and the disguises made him unique. But this guy is smug, boring, and lame. At least AOSCH Sonic showed a soft side with Tails. Well, this guy barely does that. Sonic and Eggman get trophies that say that everyone's a winner and tried their best, and Sonic complains about participation trophies. That came out of complete nowhere. Wouldn't it be a lot more costly for him to make a whole bunch of trophies? It would have made more sense if Eggman had explicitly only been given this trophy out of fear, because he would have stolen a trophy for himself regardless, so he wants to prevent more crime. I wish I could say I liked this episode, but with an ending so obvious that it destroys the point of watching the episode, I'm seething too much to care. Sonic is such a jerk Sue in this show. The writer can't handle their little creator's pet losing even a pointless race with no stakes. At least when AOSCH did this idea, the stakes were that an orphanage was being threatened, and Eggman wanted to win a cash prize. And Sonic felt a bit more like he earned the victory, because there was one point where his car was trapped in a bunch of ice, and Scratch and Grounder had to save him. Well, all Sonic does is just drive. I'm still reeling from that horrible ending. If the writer knew it was a foregone conclusion, he shouldn't have written it to be so predictable anyways. What was forcing him to have Sonic win? Literally anybody else should have won. That's the immediate common sense thing to write at this point in the franchise. I was very proud of the show when I thought Eggman won, but he somehow avoided crossing the finish line when it was right there! He had nothing else to do, and he just bored himself and wasted his time. So Tails fixed Sonic's car at the speed of light when realistically he never had the time, just for a Deus Ex Machina so Sonic would win. Didn't they realize that Boom Eggman was more liked than Sonic at this point? Talk about not knowing your audience. That's not self-aware of the show. I hope that Clement hated this episode too. I mean, he's a fan of Eggman, you'd think he'd be pissed that Eggman lost. At least it was interesting to watch the race when the heroes were cheating against each other. I wish we were told that the mayor explicitly allowed cheating to make for more interesting television. At least that's more believable of here than AOSCH's race, because the mayor is corrupt. So I'm not enraged at how the heroes are getting away with cheating this time around. But I still hated the race because there's so much painfully boring padding where the cars were just driving in a straight line. The setting was literally just the tropical forest again. At least in AOSCH, there was one time where Sonic's car fell into a chemical bath, and we were supposed to believe it was Chemical Plant Zone. And the only reason this plot started was because the heroes uncharacteristically planned to have a race on public roads when they always race in the canyon. For good reason. Chain letter. Predictably, when Eggman is trying to be threatening, it's about something mundane. He gets an email spam saying that he'll be cursed if he doesn't forward the message to people. There's no way he'd fall for this. Nobody would. And how did he not already friend Orbot and Cubot? Eggman desperately tries to convince random people to friend him on the internet, without threatening to kill them like any Robotnik would do. As I wonder why this is the subject of a Sonic the Hedgehog story. He carries a bunch of boxes for a person with a stereotypical posh accent, and predictably it's not as easy as him just immediately friending him. He says that he won't have internet for a few weeks, so Eggman drops the heavy boxes on him, and he assumes that hip condescending rabbit has hundreds of friends, so he embarrassingly says a bunch of young slang. The writers awkwardly try to say friend space instead of MySpace, as the rabbit says that it's obsolete. Then Eggman walks away from an old man because he doesn't know about internet stuff, so Dave panics when he hits him with a car, but when he gets up, he drives away anyways, just to somehow hit him backing up. Tails kicks a brown soccer ball around with his friends. Well, at least it's unique of the show that they have the soccer ball be brown of all things. And I guess Sonic is humoring his friends by not using his super speed to win instantly. Because in Archie, you'd immediately expect Sonic to play the entire soccer game himself. I'd be much more entertained by seeing that. Sonic naturally refuses to friend Eggman. Eggman runs around sobbing, but then Tails is smart by saying that if he adds Eggman on MySpace, he'll have a great way to keep tabs on him. Why didn't Tails just make a spy bot at the start of the show? Sonic of course deletes the spam, but then his hanger thing makes him fall off. Hammock, that's what it's called. Sonic complains that he's gotten an animated penguin gif and a poorly written article complaining about the mayor's email server or something. He's talking too fast. Then Sonic accuses Barker of running a scam. How the hell did he figure out that Barker was the one making the scam? Is he seriously the only person on the entire island who runs scams? Really? I guess someone said it to him and I was too busy typing something else. Because Sonic got distracted by Eggman's messages to him, he keeps getting rammed into by Bearmobians. He unfriends him when he sent another cat video. How behind in the times? Well, I guess they're trying to make Eggman behind in the times, and it's not just the writer. Because Eggman is like 50 years old. But they don't say that to explain why he totally bought the chain letter thing. Eggman's a great demonstration of how not to internet, I guess. And he amuses me by saying he'll create his own social network with no Sonics allowed, which will predictably fail. Eggman's still mad at Sonic when he bumps into him, and Sonic says that it's his fault for sending him too many pictures of his Egg Benedict brunch. Eggman must have been really lonely to be doing that to Sonic without purposely trying to annoy him. It would have made more sense if he was purposely trying to annoy him. They're enemies! Eggman cringeworthily fails to convince someone to use his social network at first. And he doesn't just threaten them with missiles to get them to do it like any Robotnik would. Although he actually does succeed because the rabbit finds out no one's using it, so she likes how exclusive it is. I guess her plan after that was to make one of her friends sign up for it. Because it'd be worthless if literally no one was using it but her. So everybody signs up for Scrambler, even though it's run by Eggman, and why would they want to give their personal information to him? And so everyone is too distracted looking at it when walking to talk to each other. This is a resentful writer. I've never signed up for any social media thing. Well, I barely use Twitter, so I can't relate to this, and I'm glad I've never been one of those zombies. Sonic has my sympathy when he's rejected so much. Someone betrays the hero of the world by excluding him from a Scrambler event. You'd think if anything Sonic would get preferential treatment. You know, he was treated a lot better in Sonic X. Of course, Eggman's depressed because he doesn't have any real friends, as he learned when he asked for a cup of sugar and got nothing but confusing winks. I asked my grandpa if he could imagine Eggman asking his neighbor for a bowl of sugar, and he said he couldn't, and he'd just steal it with one of his robots. So even an average Joe on the street can tell you how ridiculously out of character this Eggman is. That's not to say he's terrible. He's the deepest, most interesting and entertaining Eggman of all. But he's also insanely, confusingly pathetic. He wouldn't pass up on opportunities to be evil so much. Like the opportunity to destroy Sonic's house overnight since he knows where it is. Sonic then decides to humor this evil monster by joining Scrambler, because the same guy who dragged Knuckles through a desert of broken glass just can't help being nice to Robotnik. Scrambler sounds like the name of something that would scramble people's brains to be brainwashed by Eggman. When he says it's got an intuitive interface, he gets unfriended immediately for petty revenge. And speaking of petty revenge, just when I was thinking of all the money Eggman would logically make from Scrambler, he deletes the whole app and probably walks around booing people, and one of them throws a banana peel at him. Sure, it was inconvenient for Eggman that someone happened to have a banana peel outside. What was he thinking deleting that app? He could have been a billionaire. Eggman's got genius as one of his canon character traits. A genius who can make free-willed robots wouldn't be this stupid as to prevent himself from getting all that money. But I guess from the looks of his fancy house, he already is rich, so he doesn't care about getting more money, because that's totally realistic. He tried to get a ransom from the mayor. This was a mostly cringe-worthy episode, where the Sonic franchise cares more about proving they're relevant than about exciting action that only Sonic can offer. We didn't need an episode reminding us that Facebook exists. And part of the premise was that somehow Eggman fell for the most cliche spam imaginable. I actually never got the spam. When Sonic fell out of his hammock right after deleting the spam, I assumed this would be an episode where he'd get tons of bad luck, because, go figure, in a fantasy universe where anything can happen, the spam actually gave him bad luck when he deleted it. It could have been created by a wizard. Instead, the idea is completely ignored. To be fair, that would be a bad message to impressionable people, that actually does give you bad luck. But it'd be far more interesting to see that than to see an episode that does nothing but remind you that social media exists. It would have been a bit more justified to have this plot if it was making it obvious that Eggman was intentionally annoying people. But somehow I'm supposed to believe he's just doing all this annoying by accident. Aside from showing us through Eggman what bad behavior on social media is, it didn't do anything at all to meaningfully parody it. Like, I don't know, telling us that it's nothing but an excuse to data mine people and make money off their personal information? That it spies on our web history through cookies? That it's nearly impossible to delete a Facebook account. Like, Eggman would totally have this as evil deeds. The show was so chicken shit scared of being sued by Facebook that it didn't mention any of that and just had everyone be distracted by it, which is so go figure. What's the point? No one would betray the hero of the world by not letting him into an event after all he did for them, even if the app's excluding Sonic. Of course Eggman would be petty enough to do that. I get why they're trying to apply his personality to whatever they can think of, because this Eggman really has personality. But this plot would feel a lot better if instead of him just being gullible and stupid, he wanted to forward the message to bother people on purpose, and he was bothering Sonic on purpose, not by accident when he's supposed to be a bad guy. At least it humanized him that he was depressed about having no real friends. But wait a minute, he's got Orbot and Cubot. They're his friends, even if they work for him too. They work for him. Why can't he ask them for a cup of sugar? Then they can go to someone's house and steal some for him. That'd be more interesting to watch than this episode. I can already imagine Orbot having Cubot standing on top of him because it's the only way to let him reach a window. And he breaks the window with his fist and falls through it onto the counter. And then he gets a sugar bowl and has to run out of the house in a panic being chased. And they just barely make it to Eggman with all the sugar. And maybe the civilian is following behind them. Even that would be more exciting than this episode was. There wasn't any action at all. Why did Eggman delete the app? How much money was that making him? So he'll do that stupid thing out of spite, but not annoying Sonic? Basically, it was about Eggman being a bad Facebook friend and then owning Facebook, but instead of doing all sorts of sinister things with the personal information like you'd expect a bad guy to, he ends up looking way too innocent and naive because he doesn't even do that. By the way, why doesn't someone as hated as Eggman get a lot more spam than that? One measly spam that he's somehow totally naive about doesn't cut it. Logically, if he's that gullible to the point where I'm proud of the show for not making Knuckles make that mistake, then why hasn't he gone bankrupt by now from sending his money to Nigerian print scams? Especially since not only is he a well-known destructive criminal, but everybody's gotta know he's rich, so a lot of people will be trying to get money out of him. You'd think he'd have already gone powerlessly bankrupt from being scammed out of all his money, which would be the silliest way for Eggman to get taken down ever. Why doesn't someone do that to Archie Eggman? Scam him into sending tons of money to them and bankrupt him. Pretend he's his ally. Even though he takes spam at its word in a day and age with a spam folder, somehow he still got the money for a big fancy base and the materials for robots when he doesn't even work for a living. He must be a billionaire because of a much more competent father. He tried to become a bad guy to impress his father, so his father has to have been a villain himself. And maybe that's where all his money comes from. Because we don't see Eggman selling robots and saying that he does that every week. Also, how does this island have no cars, but social networking and the internet just fine? Everyone's walking around as a pedestrian like it's the 1700s, or one island on the planet. But it's modern in every other sense of the word.